The Pink Couch. By Kina Jackson, Kina J. Chapter 1 The Beginning. Do not despise these small beginnings. Zechariah 4:10. I stood on my grandmother's clear plastic vinyl floor runner, peering out of the front door of her two-family flat. My widowed grandmother, Mrs. Mattie Bell, lived in the bottom portion while her aunt stayed on the top. My grandma was a hard-working woman who cared for her entire family and many others. She never turned down a soul. Her house, simply known as the house, was always full of families and anyone who needed a place to stay. After years, Grandma walked away from the generous home that she owned because she was tired. She fixed it up and turned it into a rental property. This led to my family having to leave the only home I had ever known. In between leaving my childhood home on Farrer Street and my mother searching for a place to stay, we stayed with loved ones. Although in 1997, the day I stared out of my grandmother's door feels like yesterday. I wore a tracksuit, the kind that crinkled when you walked. It was red, white, and blue just like the Olympics. My luggage was packed and waiting at the door with me. I was soon on my way to visit my father who had left Detroit. When I first learned he was moving, I appeared calm, supportive, and strong to him and my mother. Secretly, I cried because I was saddened. I had already heard rumors of his leaving, but in my dad's fashion, he broke the news to me a day before hitting the road. He and his wife, my stepmom Katie, packed up their lives and moved to Colorado Springs. My life would be forever changed. By this time, I was a professional at hiding my emotions. Somewhere in my soul lived a little girl who wanted to scream and cry. My world wasn't pretty, pink, perfect, or seemingly even fair. Before my dad left Michigan, he promised that he'd send for me to come and visit. Excitedly, that day had finally arrived. Although the trip was said to be temporary, I somehow knew that I would stay much longer. I guess you can say that I had women's intuition even in my youth. For the first time ever, I would ride on an airplane. I was told that, because I was a minor, I would have a chaperone. I felt excited, bitter, and nervous all at once. I was so excited to see my daddy again. What girl wouldn't be? Whether he was good, bad, or indifferent, my dad could do no wrong in my eyes. Yet, I was bitter too, because my family in Detroit was my entire being. They depended on me as I depended on them. I had younger siblings and considered myself their watchman and protector. Though I needed my mom, naturally, she also needed me. To add to my mixed feelings, I was nervous to fly on a plane. Thankfully, Katie would meet me halfway, so we could travel to Colorado together. Before my trip, my grandmother, a living earth angel, made sure I had everything I needed. She was responsible for every Easter, school picture day, and pajama outfit. Thanks to my grandma, I had new underwear, socks, clothes, and of course, luggage. When it was almost time to head to the airport, I patiently waited for my mom to pull up while reflecting on the months beforehand. One lasting memory near my childhood home occurred soon before we moved. A fourth grader, I stood in a line along the school fence while waiting for classes to start. I was determined to go to school just before summer, although many students had stopped coming. While getting ready for school earlier, I chose to wear a skirt. I knew that my only clean underwear was way too large, but I took the risk anyway. To prevent the unthinkable, I purposely stood in the back of the line outside of my school. Trying to seem unbothered, I realized that I made a huge mistake. The inevitable happened. Down to my ankles, my underwear went. To say that I was embarrassed is an understatement. I cleverly and quickly grabbed my loose panties. I then ran to the closest teacher to ask for a safety pin. Oddly, as I shamefully glanced around me, no one seemed to notice what happened. It turns out that God was always hiding me, even before I was aware. Our life experiences will place strengths inside us that we otherwise would not receive. Personally, I learned that I had endurance and resourcefulness. Around this time, I took to writing. I gave my mom's oldest sister, my Aunt Terry, a long letter that she still has today. I voiced my concerns and worries since she was a safe outlet. Unlike many other family members, she never stopped going to church. Aunt Terry always allowed God to use every gift He assigned to her. Ministering in song, she has been the choir director at our local church for what seems like forever. She was and is a rock to our family. My Aunt Terry would always teach me the Word of God, and bought me my very first Bible. She assured me that God would restore the years in my life that the cankerworm has eaten. Job 2:25. She would comment that I went through a lot as a child yet never complained. She exclaimed that I had to grow up faster than I should have. I was carrying burdens that were not mine. I thank Aunt Terry for the seed of hope that she planted in me. I knew that sooner or later, God would intervene. After finally receiving Section 8, my mother looked for our new home. While she searched, I was unfortunately split up from my mom, precious baby sisters, and baby brother. You don't know pain until you have to sleep in a separate home from your family. I loved and fought for them just as they did the same for me. Sharing every difficult moment together, we knew what it meant to struggle. Being separated from my mom and siblings was one of the toughest times I faced as a child. Since we didn't live together, I looked forward to the weekends. I could go wherever they were. What my mother did never mattered to me, my family's company was simply my lifeline. Depending on where they were some weekends, my mother often tried convincing me to not visit them. She would explain that there was little room where they stayed, but I always pleaded my case. I would sleep on the ground if need be. Now, don't get me wrong. If I couldn't stay with my family, my grandmother's home would be the next best thing. Being there was always a pleasure and joy. There was cable TV, ice cream, fruit, and possible trips to Meijer. We would help my grandmother with her gardening and play outside before coming in for the night. My favorite meal was my grandmother's spaghetti. It's evident that God gave her a specific grace to care for her family the way she did. I never heard her complain or act selfishly. She was and is the most upright, selfless person you'll ever meet. At the time, my grandmother worked the weeknight shift at the Chrysler automotive plant. She would always get off at 2 o'clock in the morning and somehow had weekends off. On early Saturday mornings, right after work, she picked me up to join her all weekend. No matter our age, we always slept in bed with her. During weekdays, I had to stay with my Auntie Judy. We had always lived together, so it was cool. Close-knit, my cousins and I were raised like siblings. I was in the same grade as my cousin Buddy. His little sister Chanel was a few grades behind us. We had some crazy, fun and adventurous times growing up. Buddy was my first annoyance, fight, friend, and the person I felt drawn to protect. Thanks to him, I was also introduced to Kirk Franklin. God used this gospel songwriter, singer, and choir director in such a mighty way in my life. I would have my mother listen to his classic song, "The Storm Is Over Now." My favorite lyrics were, "No more cloudy days. They're all gone, gone away. I feel like I can make it. The storm is over now." By God's grace, I was created with an innate spiritual knowing. God is supreme, and I have always believed in His true word. He was and still is my hope. I wanted my mom to feel that same assurance, so she could be comforted too. My family grew up in the church. Every first Sunday, we helped my grandmother prepare communion. During that time, communion consisted of pouring actual grape juice into little bitty cups. My grandmother was responsible for purchasing the juice and always wore a white nursing outfit for the occasion. Everything got real serious on Sundays, but the highlight for me was hearing my Aunt Terry sing and exploring my grandmother's purse. She always carried a bag of peppermints. If we were lucky, we found hard strawberry candy too. Butterscotch was our least favorite. It wasn't long after that we, her grandchildren, grew older and lost interest in our church. Church life for me, however, wouldn't stop there. From my late teenage years into adulthood, I was a professional church hopper. A church hopper is someone who visits many different churches, but doesn't have an affiliation or allegiance to any. My grandmother was one of the founding members of our childhood church. She kept us involved. Though our parents weren't very active members, we acted in plays, and even sang with the children's choir. We looked forward to summer vacation Bible school every year. Though I was a kid, I held the things of God in high regard. I knew that church business was serious business. This was the time in my life where seeds were planted, the seeds of the realization that there is a God. I learned that the process and timing for the watering and growth of these seeds were God's business. Even my steps as a child were ordered, the good steps, the bad steps, and the ugly ones. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I would have never thought that my dad would move to Colorado, requiring me to travel 1,330.8 miles, almost 20 hours away, to see him. I'll never forget the words of a customer at a taco establishment where I once worked. I was paid $6 an hour, under the table. As I mopped the floor, that customer spoke to me before leaving. He said, "Remember, no 2 days are alike." I have never forgotten those words. When walking with God, you can always expect surprises. It's never boring. God is always modifying and altering things in your life for His will. We may not be privy to why, but ultimately, we can rest assured knowing that it's for our good. Whenever I am let go from a job, ending a relationship, or receiving not so good news, a sense of peace is somehow attached to it. You have to know that God is only aligning you to establish and position you for greater. Don't worry when things change, worry when they remain the same. Our first move. My mom had finally found us a new home on a street called Plainview. I can't recall how long it took. I just knew that the wait was over. I had some important concerns. Is this my opportunity for a normal life? Is this our chance for better days? Is it my turn to have my own room, a pretty pink one with cute bedspreads and curtains? We had a HUD, Housing and Urban Development, house, and the rent wasn't too costly. I had my questions, but I was so proud to have our own home. Our new neighborhood was not too far from our relatives. We had a gigantic porch surrounded by black brick. No other home on the block looked like ours. As soon as you stepped into the house, you were slapped dead in the living room. There was no entrance or hallway. The carpet was the kind that was bound to the floor. It was really thin, like what you would find in businesses and doctors' offices. We had a brand new gray, microfiber sofa and love seat set. It lasted all of 1 year. Our flimsily small wooden entertainment center featured a TV and radio with 2 speakers. In my embellishing mode, I tried to place one speaker way opposite the other to generate a real stereo effect. Sadly, the speaker's wiring would not allow me to be great. To the right of the living room was our kitchen, a fair size for a small 2-bedroom home. Some of my fondest recollections were in that space. Thinking he was a Power Ranger, my brother would power pose on top of the dining table. I also associate that kitchen with my 6th grade school project. I woke up late one morning, and as usual, I got myself ready for school. Running way behind for the bus, it suddenly dawned on me that my science project was due. My assignment was to make an object shaped like a 3D cylinder. In a hopeless undertaking to find something pronto, I opened every cabinet in the kitchen. There weren't many options, but I happened to discover a jar of peanut butter. Its lid resembled a cylinder to me. Because it wasn't flat, I somehow tricked my mind into believing that the top sides had a 3D effect. Certainly, or so I thought, I came up with a bright, last-minute idea. I quickly placed the peanut butter lid in my pocket and ran out of the house. I had made new friends in my neighborhood, so I didn't have to ride the bus alone. Arriving at school, I knew it was a big day. Every student in the class came prepared to show off the elegant projects that they and their parents had diligently completed over the weekend. After a quick observation, I scanned the room and could have sunk in my chair. Based on my memory, I guessed what was needed. Yet, what I brought in was not what my teacher asked for. I instantly gathered the lie that I would confess. During this show and tell from hell, I handed my teacher my project. With a look of disgust, she picked it up with the tip of 2 fingers. She reacted as if I gave her a jar of suspicious specimens. So much for my bright idea. I told her that I thought she asked us to find something around the house that matched a cylinder. This moment was the first of many that teachers would note and voice their concerns about me to me. It was also the onset of repeated times of being the only one who flunked, the only one who was tardy, and the only one with excessive absences. This embarrassment was around the time that I stopped caring about my report card. In my family, you could celebrate your report card and retrieve $5 for every A, $2 for every B. My grades were private, between my mother and myself only. Besides, school, perfect attendance, and amazing grades weren't my main focus anyway. It became quickly evident that this fragile, sweet, and beautiful brown girl did not have the perfect grades, attendance, and structure to go along with her innocence. Back to the house. Exiting the kitchen placed you right back in the living room. In our house, the living room was also a den, family room, playroom, TV room, and sometimes a bedroom. Our new furniture quickly became rundown and dirted with burn marks and the like. The middle seat of the couch lost its grip, causing the person seated there to almost hit the floor. Thank God for pillows. Did I mention that this couch and love seat had the appearance of detachable cushions? Deception is real because that was the only appearance and not reality. Our bathroom was located down the hallway that was immediately outside the living room. I kept potpourri in our bathroom. I learned that from my late stepmom Katie. She and my dad always kept a clean home that smelled so nice. I always wanted my house to smell just like theirs when I got older. At the age of 12, I started my first menstrual cycle. I was timid and confident all at the same time. Much like in other areas of my life. I anticipated it and was ready to get it over with. This has been my temperament about many things. One of my greatest strengths is that I adapt effortlessly. Ma, I think I started my period, I smirked. After summoning my mother to the bathroom, she gave me advice. Make sure you wash up and change your pads, because you will smell like fish. Then she segued into the talk, otherwise known as the birds and the bees. She said, men only want one thing from you. Your dollar and at colon. The end. Talk about killing two birds with one stone. Today, I can laugh and say that because of this talk, I feared giving myself away or being used for something so secret. I learned to value my body with great regard. I was far from perfect, but I ultimately and innately knew that I carried a prized possession. 2 bedrooms made the remainder of the house. My mother and stepdad Michael had a room where my 2 baby sisters slept as well. My little brother, Michael Jr., nicknamed Mino, and I shared the other. To my disappointment, I didn't get my own pink room. We each had a twin bed with little to no space for anything else. I always made the best of everything, so I felt excited when we were given a vintage hospital nightstand with 2 drawers. I thought, okay, we're going somewhere. What someone else thought was trash was the perfect addition to me. That was our first home. I wanted to maintain its newness and warmth. However, the excitement of our new home quickly faded. I noticed that I didn't have the type of house that I would want my neighborhood friends to see. Whenever they came to hang out, I would have them wait on our porch. Our house looked totally different from theirs. As you can tell, the comparison had a grip on me. Looking back now, such sweet, beautiful memories of that home arise in my mind. It's true what they say, some kind of way, the good outweighs the bad. Despite the ghetto living, those years were some of the richest of my life. What kind of riches? Rich in love, rich in uncertainty, rich in dependability, rich in hope, and rich in family. The good bad times. Contrary to popular opinion, there is joy inside of every struggle. You'll find hope and expectation in the valley. Love is there and so is peace. It is not always about what we are made to go through. Rather, it is about embracing the experience and people on the ride with you. This perspective makes the journey all the more special. There's nothing fun about struggling, but the infrastructure of the struggle can be sweet. It's like living life on the edge and not knowing what to expect, an adventure if you will. The Oxford Dictionary describes adventure as an unusual and exciting, typically hazardous, experience or activity. I like the Free Dictionary meaning, which says, to proceed despite risks. If you are presently proceeding in life despite unfavorable conditions, let me relieve you. In order for something to be fixed, it has to first be broken. Before life can get better, it has to worsen. When experiencing challenges, you have no place to look but up. When you look up, you're acknowledging your Heavenly Father. You're confessing that you have exhausted all of the resources and limitations in your current capacity. You are then placed in a posture for more and better. The prerequisite for growth or expansion is recognizing that either you have outgrown a space, or it has closed in on you. Alternatively, that which was formerly bearable becomes too uncomfortable. When this happens, you are ready for the abundance that the Lord has for you. My advice to you is to get ready, the tables must turn. Praise God in the hallway.